in one of the best websites is something called interspecies communications. And you can find out all sorts of things there, like about how whales talk. And they talk to each other using acoustic holograms. And these are like giant thought balloons, which of course we have no idea how to translate. The biggest animals in the world, we have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And at this site, one of the researchers said, to give you some idea how hard it is to figure out what whales are saying, try to imagine translating a Beethoven symphony into words, all the notes into words, not to mention things like rhythm and harmony and harmonics. It's impossible. But out on the web, it's really easy to feel sort of isolated. And so a lot of the sites seem to be designed like ads for yourself. So you come across all these personal websites and QuickTime movies of the family dog and personality sketches and diaries. And it's a way of making your own life into a series of icons and abstractions and sitcoms. And it uses some of the same techniques that pop culture uses to make its own icons, to turn otherwise kind of average people into superheroes. And it reminds me of something that I saw last summer in Zurich. And I was passing the train station, and I heard what sounded like a riot. Now, I'm always ready for a riot, and I happened to have my Polaroid, so I rushed into the station. And in the middle of the station, there was this huge statue of Michael Jackson, made of fiberglass to look like granite. And this thing was about 4 stories high, and it looked like a combination of Stalin and some Nordic god. And he's wearing a bikini and Mexican-style bandolero bullet belts strapped across the chest, and shoes the size of cars. And he was standing, his legs far apart, on a huge pedestal inscribed, Michael Jackson, his story. And there was a really big sound system, but they weren't playing this record. It was only sound effects of uneasy crowds about to riot. You know, so it turned out to be a very good idea, since it's never actually good PR to unveil something of this size in total silence. And the only people there were about 200 members of the Brazilian soccer team, stuck between trains in the station, sitting on their sports sags, picking ice cream cones, and me, and some early commuters on their way out to suburbia, and then all these rioting crowd sound effects echoing off the walls of the station. And there was a Swiss guy in gold lame pants standing on the pedestal between these gargantuan legs. And he had a microphone, and he was giving some kind of really enthusiastic political speech in the Swiss-German dialect. And apparently, one of the sub-themes of the record is that somehow Michael Jackson's music was instrumental in the freeing of Eastern Europe. And I just stood there laughing for about 10 minutes. I thought it was so great. Now, actually, I've always thought of Michael Jackson as just another pop artist, although I really liked the production. But as I was looking at this statue, I was really changing my mind. I mean, my estimation of his art shot up by about 1,000%. And I now think he may be one of the greatest artists of the century. I mean, conceiving yourself as a giant action doll from outer space and using Stalinist propaganda techniques, this is a certain kind of weird genius. And so what if he didn't actually think of it himself? You know, a lot of artists work in teams now. And then, of course, there's the part about actually marrying and then divorcing the king's daughter, which adds a whole other dimension. I mean, this guy is fantastic. And one of the best websites to check in is Graceland, where you can find out things like that Elvis used to go riding around with the police, and he loved stopping people, pulling them over, but he didn't actually have the authority to write out tickets, so he would just, give them an autograph instead. Now, last time I was at the Graceland site, I checked into an electronic seance in which they managed to contact the king in the afterworld. And the communication system was 2 knocks. Yes. 1 knock. No. And it went like this. Elvis. Elvis. Is that you? So, Elvis, how is life in the afterlife? Is it good? That's great. So, Elvis, do you approve of all the renovations we've been doing here at Graceland? All the new attractions and the exhibits and our online presence and our interactive website and the new interface? Gone to a lot of trouble and expense building this stuff. But of course Elvis is sort of an exception. There aren't really that many dead people on the net. In fact, it seems like everyone there is sort of newly minted, like they came from nowhere. It reminds me of something that I read in an online magazine about UFOs, and the lead article in the magazine was titled, "Do your grandparents come from outer space?" And there was a checklist to fill out to find out if they did. And the questions were things like, did your grandparents use advanced electronic equipment? Did your grandparents always seem to have an uncanny knowledge of the future? Were your grandparents always giving advice? Did your grandparents work for the betterment of life on this planet? Did the stories your grandparents told you about their own backgrounds vary each time they were told? And since in my case, the answer to all these questions was a definite yes, and because their stories were a little vague, I've been thinking about all 4 of them in a whole new way. But to tell the truth, I did once have a positive experience in digital communications, and it was a conference on, naturally, the future of communications and technology, and it was coming from Montreal, where there was a conference on theater and new music, and they had hookups with the director Robert Lepage in Quebec City and a digital artist in Amsterdam and myself in Frankfurt. And this was the kind of system in which the audio was a continuous stream, but the picture only updated itself every few seconds as still images. So you'd be looking at a series of these sort of frozen expressions, and it always looked like the person who was talking was sort of shocked and amazed by the words that had just come out of their mouths.